Hello and welcome to Drunk on Tea. Today I'm going to show you how to paint this Silver Templar Space Marine for your games of Warhammer 40,000. So the first thing I've done is I've primed the model black, as this will give us a nice even, smooth base coat for the rest of our colours to work from. And now the first thing I'm doing is I'm coming in with some lead belcher and I'm going to paint all over the power armour. Keep your paint nice and thin at this stage and just build up in a couple of layers until we get a smooth cover of lead belcher all over the power armour to the Space Marine. You don't have to worry about being too neat at this stage, it doesn't matter if we get lead belcher over other areas, but try and keep this over just the power armour to the Space Marine, so make sure you catch all of his head, chest, arms, legs and backpack with a couple of layers of lead belcher until we build up to that nice smooth solid cover all over the power armour. As you can see here, I'm leaving the shoulder pads black, as we'll be coming in and painting these with another colour later on. Your first layer will be a little bit patchy, so don't worry about that. Just wait for it to dry and then come back in with a second layer of lead belcher until we build up to that solid colour all over the power armour. And after a couple of layers of lead belcher, you can see I've built up to a smooth, even base coat all over the power armour to the Space Marine. So now with some Abaddon black, I'm going to come in and paint the shoulder trim to the shoulder pads. It's just these lines here on the outside, catching these with a layer of Abaddon black. So being nice and neat around the power armour. Just making sure I catch the outer trim of the shoulder pads with a layer of Abaddon black. I'm also going to catch this chest plate here with some Abaddon black as well. Being careful to avoid the Aquila on his chest. Just make sure you catch this chest plate with a layer of Abaddon black as well. And with that Abaddon black applied, that's the chest plate and the shoulder pad rims picked out with some Abaddon black. So now with some Corvus black, I'm going to paint all of the strapping and the undersuit to the power armour. So any straps like these here on the back, catch them with a couple of layers of Corvus black. And also any of the ribbing sticking out from his undersuit, catch this with a couple of layers of Abaddon black as well. Obviously being nice and neat around the silver power armour we've already painted. Just pick out all of these details with a couple of layers of Corvus black. I'm also going to pick out his belt at this stage and any pouches you may have on your model as well. Catch these with some Corvus black. And finally, any of the weapon casings, I'm catching these with a layer of Corvus black as well. So be this casing here on his bolt pistol, as well as the casing here on his chainsword. I'm also going to catch the crossguard and the pommel with some Corvus black as well. Being nice and neat around the power armour for these details, just catch all of these with some Corvus black. And with that Corvus black applied, that's all of the black details on the model picked out. So now the next stage is start applying some colour to the model. So with some Avalanche Sunset, I'm going to come in and paint the inside of all of his shoulder pads. It's being nice and neat when I get around the Abaddon black on the rims. This will take a couple of layers to build up to a solid colour. Just be nice and neat, working in a couple of layers. Build up to a solid colour of Avalanche Sunset on both of his shoulder pads. And I'm also going to paint the Aquila on his chest as well, which will be nice and neat around the black and the silver. Just make sure you pick out all of the Aquila with a couple of layers of Avalanche Sunset. And with that Avalanche Sunset applied, that's given a pop of colour to our Silver Templar, really made those details stand out against the silver power armour. So now with some Mephiston red, I'm going to come in and paint his left knee pad. This is where the squad number for Silver Templars goes, so just make sure you pick out this knee pad with a layer of Mephiston red. With that knee pad picked out, that's another pop of colour added to the model. So now with a little bit of Screamer Pink, I'm going to come in and just paint the handle to his chainsword. So it's just this little bit here you can see on the outside. Catch this with a layer of Screamer Pink. And also this little bit here on the inside. Being nice and careful, just picking this out with some Screamer Pink as well. And with that Screamer Pink applied, that is the final pop of colour added to our Space Marine. So the last detail now is just to pick out the final metallics on his weapons. So for this I'm coming in with some Iron Hand Steel. I'm just going to paint any of the metallic details on his weapons. So things here like the muzzle to his bolt pistol, as well as the magazine casing and the back of the pistol. And on the chainsword, it will be the engine and the teeth. I'm just going to pick these out with a little bit of Iron Hand Steel. By using Iron Hand Steel, it creates a slightly different colour to the lead belcher that we've used over the rest of the Space Marine. But if you don't have Iron Hand Steel, you can pick these out with lead belcher. And with those metallic details applied, that is all of the base coats applied to our Silver Templar. So the next thing to do is to start shading the model. And start off with, for the shading, I'm coming in with some Abaddon black, which I'm thinning down with a lot of water, making it to about the consistency of a shade paint. For this I'm just going to do a recess shade into all of the recesses of the model. I'm using Abaddon black for this rather than Nuln Oil, because it's a slightly darker colour, which will act more like an old-fashioned black lining and really make all of these panels on the armour stand out. Obviously be nice and neat at this stage. Try not to get this over any of the areas of silver, but just make sure you pick out every recess on the power armour with a thin pin shade of thinned down Abaddon black. Now this does tend to dry a little bit darker than when it first goes on, so don't worry if it looks a little bit too light when you first apply it. Just take your time, work your way around the model and apply a thin pin shade to all of the recesses all over the power armour of our Silver Templar. I don't know if you know any of the lore for the Silver Templars, but they've got quite an interesting backstory from an Ultramarine successor chapter, with a real passion for looking after their weapons and maintaining their equipment to a really high standard. So because I'm going to paint this in a very clean colour, without any battle damage or anything like that, because Silver Templars really look after all of their equipment on the battlefield. And after that pin shade's been applied and dried, you can see it's really made all of those panels stand out, really added definition all over the power armour to the Space Marine. So now with some known oil, I'm going to come in and shade all of the areas we painted with Corvus Black and Iron Hand Steel, just giving this an all over shade of known oil. Obviously being nice and neat around the power armour, don't want to catch this over any of that lead belcher we've applied. Just make sure you catch all of the weapons and the undersuit to the armour as well with a shade of known oil. Finally, with some Agrax Earth shade, I'm going to come in and apply a recessed shade right at the very edge of the shoulder pads, keeping this nice and thin, just applying a thin recessed shade of Agrax Earth shade around the shoulder pads. And I'm going to apply a light shade all over the Aquila on his chest as well. Make sure this doesn't pull too heavily, just shade all of that Aquila with some Agrax Earth shade. If you're enjoying the video, please press like. If you want more videos, press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. If you would like to support the channel and become a member, please press the join button down below. And with all of those shades applied, you can see it's really added definition and detail all over the Space Marine. So now with some Stormhost Silver, I'm going to come in and start highlighting all the power armour. So for this, I'm just applying a thin edge highlight all over the power armour, catching the edge of every panel and every raised detail with a thin line of Stormhost Silver. Once again, really take your time at this step and make sure you pick out every raised edge and every detail on that power armour with a thin line of Stormhost Silver. By working your way around the model, just picking out every one of these raised details, you really make that power armour pop and stand out, adding loads of interests all over the model. If at any point you come in a little bit too thick with any of these lines, you can come back in with some Stormhost Silver and thin them down again. But just try and keep your lines nice and even as you work your way around that power armour, highlighting all of the details. With the silver power armour to these guys, they really do look impressive when you have a load of them on the table. They really add some colour and add some interest all over your tabletop games, in what is actually quite an easy method for painting power armour. Really take your time here on the helmet, make sure you catch all of these details, because the helmet will be a focal point to the model, so you really want to make sure you get this to stand out. And after that edge highlight has been applied, you can see it's added definition to all of those panels and really made them all stand out and look like the light's catching them. So now with some Runefang steel, I'm going to come in and highlight all of the metallic parts to the weapons. So much like with the power armour, just doing a thin edge highlight on all of the metallic details to the weapons, just catching the edges and making them all stand out. We'll see here on the chainsword, I'm going to catch the edges to all of the engine. I'm also going to catch the edges to all the teeth to the chainsword as well. Just be nice and careful, just catch all of the teeth with a little spot of Runefang steel. And with that Runefang steel applied, there's all of the metallic details on the model highlighted. So the next step is we're going to start highlighting the black. So for this, I'm coming in first with Mechanica Standard Grey. I'm going to apply this to all the ribbing to the undersuit, being nice and careful to just catch those most raised parts of the undersuit with a thin line of Mechanica Standard Grey. Just going to catch any of the strapping with a thin edge highlight of Mechanica Standard Grey as well. And for the belt, I'm going to come in with a more chunky highlight because we'll be coming in with another colour to do a two-stage highlight on the belt. So come in with a chunky highlight of Mechanica Standard Grey. Same for the shoulder pad trims. Come in with a chunky highlight. For these sharp edges here, you can use the side of your brush. For the other part, use the tip and just get a nice line. I'm also going to do an edge highlight here on this chest plate. And finally, all of the weapons. I'm coming in and doing a chunky edge highlight of Mechanica Standard Grey as well. So the edge of all the panels, all of the details, just coming in and applying a chunky edge highlight of Mechanica Standard Grey. Leaving enough room so we can come in with another colour in a minute and really make all of these highlights stand out. So for the chainsword, I'm making sure I catch the pommel, as well as the crossguard, being nice and careful around the silver when I'm doing the crossguard. Now I'm going to catch the edge of the blade as well. You can do this with the side of your brush in certain areas. Just make sure you highlight all of the black with some Mechanica Standard Grey. And with that Mechanica Standard Grey applied, you can see we've added the first highlight to a lot of the black areas. So now I'm coming in with some Administratum Grey. For this, I'm going to apply it within the Mechanica Standard Grey we just applied to the belt, the shoulder pad trims, the chest plate, and the weapons. Don't need to worry about applying this step to the undersuit and the strapping, but just apply nice thin lines, allowing a little bit of the Mechanica Standard Grey to show through, as you just catch the very edge of all of these areas of black details with a little bit of Administratum Grey. When you're using the tip of your brush, just apply pressure very lightly so you only get a thin line of Administratum Grey, and you'll see that little bit of Mechanica Standard Grey showing through, giving us that two-tone highlight. Do the same on all of the weapon casings as well, just gently applying some Administratum Grey so we leave some of that Mechanica Standard Grey showing through. This will really make the weapons pop and give them the impression of sharp detail on all of the casings. And with that administratum grey applied, it's really made all of those black details stand out on the model. So now with some Avalanche Sunset, I'm going to come in and bring the Aquila back up to colour. So leave all of the Agrax Earthshade showing in the recesses. Just come in on all the raised details and bring it back up to colour with a thin line of Avalanche Sunset. To be nice and neat, just make sure you catch those raised feathers and skull details on the Aquila with a thin layer of Avalanche Sunset. With the Avalanche Sunset applied, you can see we brought the brightness back to that Aquila. And now with some Screaming Skull, I'm going to come in and apply a thin edge highlight to all of the raised details of the Aquila. So be nice and neat, keep these lines nice and small, and just apply a thin edge highlight of Screaming Skull to all of the raised details of the Aquila on his chest. And with the Screaming Skull applied, that is the Aquila on his chest highlighted. There's only a few more details left to highlight on the Space Marine. So now with some Wild Rider Red, I'm going to come in and apply a chunky highlight all the way around the knee pad. Try and keep this nice and even as we work our way around the knee pad, giving an edge highlight of Wild Rider Red. And once our Wild Rider Red has dried, we can come in and apply a highlight within that Wild Rider Red. So for this I'm using Fire Dragon Bright. Just going to add a really thin highlight right at the very edge, just as an edge highlight all the way around that knee pad. This will make that knee pad really pop out and add a bit of colour to that power armour. And with the Fire Dragon Bright applied, that is the knee pad to the Silver Templar highlighted. So now with some Pink Horror, just going to highlight the handle to his chainsword. So I'm just applying a thin edge highlight to the top of the race details on that handle. And with that handle highlighted, the only thing left to paint on the Silver Templar is the eyes. So for these eyes, I'm coming in with Abaddon Black first. I'm going to sink this into the recesses of his eye lenses, being nice and careful around all of the lead belcher. With the Abaddon Black in, that's really darkened down those eye lenses. So now I'm coming in with some Avalanche Sunset. I'm just going to apply a thin line, the lower half of each of the eye lenses. Just be a thin line going from the front to the back. With that yellow painted, the last step is to come in with some white scar. I'm just adding a small spot at the back of each of the eye lenses. This will look like a reflection point, really make those eyes stand out. And with those eyes painted, that is how to paint a Silver Templar Space Marine for your games of Warhammer 40,000. Please let me know in the comments down below What other successor chapters would you like to see me paint? And thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and happy painting!